There are voices that simply sing, and there are voices that seem to carry something more: memory, faith, longing, and the quiet weight of a life that was never supposed to unfold this way. Andrea Bocelli's voice is one of those. For more than 3 decades, it has filled opera houses, stadiums, and living rooms around the world, moving audiences who don't speak a word of Italian to tears. But behind the sold-out arenas and the platinum records is a story that begins not with fame, but with darkness, quite literally. This is the story of how a boy who lost his sight became one of the most listened-to singers on the planet, and what his extraordinary life reveals about resilience, family, and the price of being loved by millions. Andrea Bocelli was born on September 22, 1958, in the small Tuscan town of Lajatico, near Pisa, Italy, to Alessandro and Eddie Bocelli. From the very beginning, his life carried an element of struggle. He was born with congenital glaucoma, a condition that affected his eyesight from birth and made his vision poor even as an infant. His family lived a modest, rural life, earning their living through farming and the sale of agricultural equipment, and it was in that quiet Tuscan countryside, surrounded by vineyards and hills, that young Andrea's world first began to take shape. Music entered his life almost immediately. He began piano lessons at the age of 6, and his curiosity for instruments didn't stop there. Over the following years, he picked up the flute and the saxophone, developing an ear for sound that would come to define the rest of his life. It was his nanny, Oriana, who first gave him a recording of a legendary Italian tenor, Franco Corelli, a gift that planted the seed of Bocelli's fascination with the operatic voice. By the age of 7, he could already recognize and imitate the voices of famous singers, a remarkable skill for a child that young. Then, at age 12, tragedy struck. While playing football with friends, Bocelli was struck in the eye by the ball. The injury caused a brain hemorrhage, and combined with his existing glaucoma, it took the last of his remaining sight. Doctors tried various treatments to save what little vision he had left, including, according to several biographical accounts, the use of leeches in a last effort to reduce pressure and preserve his eyesight. Nothing worked. From that day forward, Andrea Bocelli was completely blind. For many families, a loss like that might have narrowed a child's world. For Bocelli, music became the opposite, an expansion. He continued singing throughout his adolescence, performing locally and sharpening the voice that had already begun to set him apart. At 14, he won his first singing competition, performing the classic Neapolitan song, O Sole Mio, an early sign of the talent that would one day carry him across the world's biggest stages. After finishing secondary school in 1980, Bocelli made a choice that might surprise those who only know him as a singer. He enrolled at the University of Pisa to study law. It wasn't an abandonment of music so much as a practical decision. To support himself through his studies, he began performing in piano bars in the evenings, singing for tips and small audiences while pursuing his legal education by day. It was in one of those piano bars, in 1987, that he met Enrica Senzati, the woman who would become his first wife. Bocelli did eventually complete his law degree and briefly worked as a court-appointed lawyer. But the pull of music never faded, and it wasn't long before it reasserted itself as the true direction of his life. He continued studying voice, and around this period he crossed paths with Franco Corelli, the very tenor whose recording had captivated him as a boy. After hearing Bocelli perform during a master class in Turin in 1986, Corelli recognized real potential in him and later took him on as a private student, refining the technique that would carry his voice onto professional stages. The turning point came in 1992. Italian singer-songwriter Zucchero Fornaciari was searching for a tenor to record a demo of his song Miserere, which he hoped to eventually have performed by Luciano Pavarotti. Bocelli was brought in to record that demo, and when Pavarotti heard it, he reportedly encouraged Zucchero to let the relatively unknown tenor sing the song himself rather than replacing him. That single decision opened the door to Bocelli's professional career. Soon after, he was discovered by talent scout Caterina Caselli, signed with Sugar Music, and began the transition from piano bar singer to recording artist. In 1994, Bocelli entered Italy's most prestigious music competition, the Sanremo Music Festival, performing Il Mare Calmo della Sera. he won the newcomers category with a record-setting score, and the moment effectively launched his career onto the national stage. That same year, he made his opera debut playing Macduff in Verdi's Macbeth, and he performed for Pope John Paul II at St. Peter's Basilica, an early sign of just how quickly his voice was crossing from regional talent to something far larger. Then, in 1995, everything changed. Bocelli released Con te partiro, a soaring ballad that would go on to become one of the most recognized songs in the world. 2 years later, an English version titled Time to Say Goodbye, recorded as a duet with British soprano Sarah Brightman, became a genuine global phenomenon. The song shattered sales records across Europe and introduced Bocelli's voice to millions of listeners who had never heard opera-influenced music before. He was no longer simply an Italian singer with a promising career. He had become an international name. The momentum continued through the late 1990s. In 1998, he took on the demanding role of Rodolfo in Puccini's La Bohème at the Teatro Comunale in Cagliari, proving to skeptics that his voice could hold its own in serious operatic repertoire. That same year, his album Aria, the opera album, brought his classical work to an even broader audience, and he made his American debut with a concert at the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts in Washington, D.C. The following day, he was welcomed at the White House by then-President Bill Clinton, a striking marker of how far he had traveled from the piano bars of Tuscany. In 1999, his album Sacred Arias, devoted entirely to religious music, reached #1 on the U.S. classical charts. According to reporting at the time, Bocelli became the first vocalist to simultaneously hold the top 3 positions on that chart with multiple albums, a record that underscored just how large his audience had grown, even among listeners who consider themselves serious classical purists. The 2000s and 2010s saw Bocelli's career expand into something few singers of any generation achieve. He performed for royalty, world leaders, and enormous crowds on nearly every continent. In 2006, he collaborated with Canadian singer Celine Dion on The Prayer, a duet that won a Golden Globe Award for Best Original Song and received an Academy Award nomination. The performance became one of the most replayed duets of the era, largely because of the emotional chemistry between the two voices. He continued to headline massive venues, London's O2 Arena, Madison Square Garden, the Staples Center, while also performing in more intimate and symbolically powerful settings, from the ancient Odeon of Herod's Atticus in Athens to a concert staged near the pyramids of Giza in Egypt. In 2010, he performed at the Grammy Awards alongside Mary J. Blige and producer David Foster in a tribute to victims of the devastating earthquake that had struck Haiti earlier that year. A reminder that, throughout his career, Bocelli frequently used his platform for humanitarian causes, supporting cancer research, disaster relief efforts, and charitable concerts around the world. That same year, he was honored with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in recognition of his contributions to live theater and music, cementing his place among the entertainment industry's most recognized figures. Central to his career has been the Teatro del Silenzio, an outdoor amphitheater built in his hometown of Lajatico, where Bocelli hosts an annual concert featuring guest artists from across the music world. It has become something of a pilgrimage site for fans, a place where the boy from Tuscany returns each year to the landscape that shaped him, now as one of the most famous singers alive. More recently, in July 2024, Bocelli marked 30 years on stage with a milestone concert at the Teatro del Silenzio, drawing more than 40,000 people and featuring appearances from artists including Placido Domingo, Ed Sheeran, Lang Lang, and Laura Pausini, among others. The event was later turned into a concert film shown in cinemas and on television around the world. In 2023, Bocelli was also awarded an honorary degree in medicine from Thomas Jefferson University, and he performed at the coronation concert for King Charles III at Windsor Castle, sharing the stage with artists such as Katy Perry and Lionel Richie. Across his career, Bocelli has released 15 solo studio albums and sold tens of millions of records worldwide, making him one of the best-selling artists in the history of classical crossover music. Bocelli's personal life has unfolded largely outside the spotlight by his own choice. He married Enrica Cinzati in 1992, the same year his career began to take off with the Miserere recording. The couple had 2 sons together, Amos, born in 1995, and Matteo, born 2 years later. For a time, the family lived a relatively quiet life in Tuscany, removed from the pressures that would later come with international stardom. In 2002, after a decade of marriage, Andrea and Enrica separated. The specific reasons behind the split have never been made public, and both Bocelli and Enrica have generally kept details of their relationship private in the years since, a pattern that has largely defined how Bocelli handles his personal life more broadly. That same year, Bocelli met Veronica Berti, who would become his second wife. The two built a relationship over more than a decade before marrying in March 2014 at the sanctuary of Montenero in Livorno, Italy. Their daughter, Virginia, was born in 2012, and the wedding date was chosen to coincide with her second birthday. Veronica has since become deeply involved in Bocelli's professional life as well, serving as vice president of the Andrea Bocelli Foundation and working closely with him on various artistic projects, including the 2023 documentary film The Journey, which followed the couple as they traveled across Italy on horseback along the historic Via Francigena pilgrimage route. Bocelli's children have each carved out their own relationship with music. His older son Amos, who was born with unimpaired vision, became a pianist and has performed alongside his father on multiple occasions. In 2018, his younger son Matteo joined him for the duet Fall on Me, a performance that drew wide attention both for its musicality and for the visible bond between father and son. Bocelli has spoken in interviews over the years about the particular experience of being a blind father, of getting to know his children's faces through touch rather than sight, and of finding, in their voices, a connection that sight was never able to offer him in the first place. The family's home base is Villa Alpamare, a pink villa on the Tuscan coast that Bocelli purchased in the late 1990s and transformed from a former hotel into a private family residence. Bocelli's immense popularity has not shielded him from criticism or controversy, and he has, at times, found himself at the center of public debate, usually in ways that reflected his own long-standing preference for privacy and restraint rather than confrontation. In late 2016, following Donald Trump's election as U.S. president, reports circulated that Bocelli had been invited to perform at the presidential inauguration. The reports drew significant public criticism, with some calling for a boycott of the singer. Bocelli had performed at private events